Hello and welcome to the studio where we paint away the stress of everyday life. Now today I want to talk about paints, different manufacturers of paints.
It's time to learn with our friend Clive. So grab your brush, have a great time. And don't forget to click subscribe.
All acrylic paint is basically the same. It's made in the same way. In slight variations of the actual recipes that they use to make the paint. Some have more water, some have more resin, etc., etc. But let's have a look at some of the paint manufacturers. So join me as we look down. Okay, first of all, let's talk about some paints. We've got Liquidex. That's an American brand. Quite a nice paint. It's like a student quality type of paint. We've also got Amsterdam. This is the Expert series. I happen to have a few samples of these lying around. A lot of these companies actually send me paints. Kryler, which is a Dale and Roney. That's more of an advanced paint. Not so much an advanced paint, but I mean a more professional paint, I should say. The colours doesn't matter. This is actually a heavy body paint. I shall discuss that in 1 second. This was another paint that I've been sent out, which is an Old Hollands paint. Old Hollands. Never used much of that, but it looks like a nice colour. It's a good quality as well, highly pigmented. I've also got some golden. I've just noticed I've got a lot of blue. Must have used the other colours. I've got some golden paints again. They are very, very good quality paints, and none of these paints that I am actually slating in any way, shape or form. It's just that I make my own handmade paints now. I've got some Artist Acrylic, which is the professional range of Winsor and Newton, and I've also got some Arteza paints. Now the only problems with these paints, although they are quite nice, is they only come in very, very small tubes. Only 22 millimeter, and I find that a bit disconcerting because two good squeezes of that and you're out of paint. But nevertheless, a very good paint, as I said. And I've also got my homemade colours, and these are made by myself in the studio and tubed up and sold on the website at www.clive5art.co.uk. And the reason I brought that one into this range of paints is because I didn't want to set myself aside from any of these. I just wanted to show you that I will do I'm going to add my thickening agent to every one of these, including my own, to show you that there is no difference no matter what paint that you have got. And this is my thickening agent. As you can see, it comes in a 35mm tube, and it's a gel-like paste. There we go. And that has been designed in a way that you can thicken up any types of paints. Even if you've got some really pound cheapy ones, you can use this. So let's have a look at the Liquitex basics. We've just got a little bit of red there. And as you can see, I'm just going to bend down and get some tissue paper. As you can see, this is quite a thin paint. Quite a thin paint. Now, let's just get a bit of cardboard, any piece of cardboard. I'm going to just use any piece of cardboard. There we go. I just watered my brush down a bit. I'm just going to go into that neat. There you go. So that's the acrylic from the Liquitex Basics. You can see it's quite a thin paint as is. You don't need a lot of water with this. You don't need a lot of water to add to this to get it to paint and smooth. It's quite a nice, smooth running paint. So if we wanted to make that a little bit thicker, we only need a small amount of my thickening paste, and we can add that to that. And all of a sudden you can see that's going to start to thicken that paint up quite a lot. And the more you add, the thicker that is going to get, and more heavy bodied it's going to become. That paste is interacting with the resin in the paint, and not the pigment. The pigment stays the same. So you've got the coverage and the opacity is exactly the same. All it does, it works on a chemical basis and thickens up that paint with the resin properties of that paint. So you can see already that's a nice thick paint now. And you can use that with a palette knife. And you don't need a lot of this. And again, we can paint with that with a brush. It's quite a thick paint. And you can see it actually improves the coverage just a little bit. There we go. This actually improves the coverage just a little bit. So you can get some more brush strokes in this. Don't see you can see that, but you can actually get some more brush strokes in that. It's a lot thicker. It's quite nice to be able to thicken up the paint. I like that. Okay, so let me just clean my palette off. There you go. I need some more kitchen roll in this studio, that's for sure. Okay, so let's have a look at the Amsterdam Expert series. This is a black, oxide black. The difference on this paint automatically, what jumps out at me straight away, is the fact that it's a lot thicker. You can see this already. That's very thick paint, and that's what you'll find with a lot of the professional series, is that it's a thicker paint with a little bit more pigment in it. And again, you can see already that's quite a nice coverage as well. Quite a nice thick paint. In fact, it's about the same viscosity as the one I just thickened up with the red. But if you wanted it thicker, then again you can add a little bit of my thickening paste, and you can see that's going to go really thick. And it's only working, again, as I said, with the resin. So be very careful you don't over add this stuff to paints. But you can see it's interacting really well with that paint. Because it's a thick paint already, it's just gone like a paste. Now if that's a bit thick, you can always add a little bit of resin or glazing medium or something to it to thin it down, but it'll actually extend your paint slightly as well. So if you wanted a nice thick paint to use as a palette knife, then you could quite nicely mold that onto the painting like this and allow that to dry. It'll take about 48 hours to actually harden completely because it's quite a thick paint, but that's quite a nice way to get some impasto texture into your paintings if you wanted a thick paint. So you don't need to spend all this money on special paints and thick paints to get the same effect. All you need to do is just pop along to the website and buy some of this thickening agent. Again, we're looking at the Acrylic. This is a heavy bodied, so it's going to be a thick paint with a higher pigment ratio in it. This happens to be a cyan. Again, I haven't used much of this. Actually, it's quite a thick paint, this one. There you go. Here it comes. Because I haven't opened this tube for about 3 years, I don't think. Don't use this colour very often. But as you can see, that's already a very thick paint. So you don't need a lot of moisture or anything to get that. If you want to keep that as a nice impasto colour, you could add a bit of water to that to thin it, or you could use a bit of glazing medium to thin it down. And that's a nice colour as well. Let me just wash my brush very quickly. Get in a bit of this blue. You can see that's very thick paint. Could be because it's been in the tube for a while. So we'll thin it down with a bit of water like that. There you go. That's quite a nice paint. And I don't need to thicken it, but I'm going to show you, just to show you that this will work on all colours and all manufacturers. If I add that to that, I can get that really, really thick. Because it works on the resin basis. It doesn't work on pigment. It works on resin. It's the resin that's in the paint that's acting with the thickening agent that I've got. So you can get a really nice thick paint out of that if you wanted to. Personally, I wouldn't on that particular paint, but you can see how thick I could make that. And that just proves to you that, you know, my thickening agent works across all ranges of manufacturers. Okay, so let's get that palette knife cleaned. Again, the Old Holland. Again, I don't think I've ever opened this tube, so I was surprised I could get the lid off that actually. That's quite a nice paint. That's quite a nice, it's like a cerulean blue, look. It's really nice. Quite like that actually. I'm going to put that one side. I think I might use that in the painting. There you go. Sometimes it's good to go through your drawers. So, let's look at this. Yes, it's quite a nice loose paint. Again, it's a lovely colour. That is a vibrant blue, really. That's quite a nice blue. I like that blue. That's really nice. So it's a nice paint. All acrylic paint is basically, all acrylic paint is, it's a resin, pigment, and some fillers. That's all it is. I've got lessons on that. I'll show you in the iCards at the top there. A little bit of my gel paste, my thickening gel, and you can see already that's going to thicken up that paint like that. Wow, look at that. You don't need a lot. You only need a small amount. So if you've got a very thin paint and you wanted to thicken it up a bit, you only need a small amount. Get it to the thickness you want. And again, we can paint with that. And that's going to give us some nice brush marks into the paint itself. There you go. So available at www.clivehighart.co.uk. Pop along. It's a small tube, but boy, it packs a punch. It really does. So let's move on to the next one. Let's just clean the old palette off again. There you go. My wife won't be happy because I'm putting this onto my my jeans. We've got some golden. This is Arazite hue. I don't know what colour that is. It looks like a blue to me. It looks like semi-transparent. It's a golden colour. Let's have a look. I've never opened this one neither. That's nice blue. It's like a very pale Prussian blue, that one. It's very nice. That's a very nice blue. Let's have a look how that looks on here. There we go. So that's a nice smooth paint. It can be quite transparent, but we're not looking at transparency at the moment. But that's quite a nice blue paint. It looks like a very, very pale Prussian blue to me. The most important thing with this is that we see if my thickening paste works with golden. There we go. Let's put a bit of that in. And of course, I had 100% sure that it did. It's just picking up a bit of that light blue. Doesn't matter. Again, just to show you that even with golden paints, it thickens up really nicely. There you go. Wow. Okay, so we need to move on to the next colour. So let's just clean this palette. So that takes me on to the Winsor & Newton professional range. This is just happens to be Priory Red. Let's have a look at that one. Again, it's quite a thick paint to start with. I just happen to have a lot of professional range paints in my arsenal, unfortunately. I got a few student colours, but a lot of them are professional paints because I do a lot of commission work. But let's just thin that down. Let's have a look at this red. You can see it's a lovely coverage, a nice flowability of paint. There we go. Lovely. But what we're interested in is, can we thicken that with our thickening paste just a little bit like that. And let's have a look. There it goes. There it goes. Nice and thick. Now the archival properties of paint as far as acrylics are concerned, they're not known, to be honest with you. These paints, acrylic paints, have only been around for 50 years. Well, since the 50s, I would say, not 50 years, but since the 1950s. So we don't really know how long acrylic paints will last. So when people say about archival properties, all we're interested in, will they last for 100 years? Well, if they last for 100 years, that's fine, because none of us are going to be here in 100 years' time. So unless we're very, very, very lucky and we get a letter from the Queen. So it doesn't really matter. As long as they're not going to fall off within the next couple of weeks, that's all you want to worry about. That's all you want to worry about. Now, Arteza, I've used these colours before. They're quite nice colours, these Arteza paints. Again, the only thing I'm disappointed with is because they've got small tubes. You can see a couple of squirts of that, and we've had it, basically. And the amount of yellow and whites and stuff that I use, then they don't last long. But as far as paints are concerned, I quite like the paint. You can see it's a reasonable thickness, and the flowability of the Arteza range goes down quite nice. I quite like the Arteza range of paints, but again, the only downside to them is the fact that they are only in small tubes. You can buy bigger quantities, I think, but the majority of paints that people buy will be in small tubes. So there we go. You can see that's quite a nice colour, but we're not worried about the colour. No, we're not. We want to know if the thickening agent will work. You can see how much I've used at the moment, only a small amount. Does it work with a teaser? Yes, it does. Look at that. Nice thick paint. As I said, you can thicken the paint as much as you want, or you can just add a very small amount just to get it slightly thick. If it's a bit runny and you wanted to thicken it a bit, just add a small amount. Don't overuse this stuff, because you're going to get a very thick paint like that. Unless you want a thick paint like that, then use a very, very small amount of it. And it's available at www.cli5art.co.uk. So I know this is going to work. You know this is going to work, but I've got to prove it. Let's just put a little bit more of my thickening agent there. There you go. That's available at www.cli5art.co.uk. This is hand blended paint. This is hand pigment. It's pigment that I buy in, some of it. Sometimes I can source my own pigments, like earth tones and things, but it's all ground by hand. It's all mulled by hand. It's all mixed by hand. And this is a nice French ultramarine blue, as you can see. There we go. What a lovely paint, even if I say so myself. And I'm going to, because it's my paint. And I lovingly made this myself. Let me just wash my brush because I've got a bit of yellow in it. It might go a bit green, doesn't matter. So let's have a look at the paint. Oh, that's a lovely paint, if I do say so myself. There we go. Nice French ultramarine blue, like that. Nice coverage. Lovely opacity. Very, very archival. Will definitely last 100 years. Let's whap all that in there. Let me just show you how thick this can get. And as I said, this is all handmade, not factory made. It's all handmade by myself in the studio. I'm mixing paint until the early hours. There you go. And you can see that's just a lovely, lovely, thick paint. There you go. Have fun. And pop along to www.cli5art.co.uk today and buy some of your thickening agent, because I tell you what, it's going to save you a lot of money. It really is.
And don't forget to click subscribe.